Richard E. Byrd, first to blaze an air route to the North Pole, prepares for a similar flight over the bottom of the Earth.
Imagine carrying a secret for nearly an entire lifetime. Imagine being ordered never to speak about what you witnessed, knowing that every passing year makes your memories heavier, while the world continues believing a very different version of history. Then imagine reaching the final chapter of your life and deciding that silence is no longer worth protecting. Whether anyone believes you or not no longer matters. All that matters is leaving behind your version of events before time erases it forever. That is the mystery surrounding one of the most controversial stories ever connected to Antarctica and the legendary American explorer Admiral Richard E. Byrd. But before we separate history from speculation, we need to understand the man at the center of it all. Long before Antarctica became the subject of internet conspiracies and mysterious documentaries, Richard Evelyn Byrd Jr. had already earned his place among America's greatest explorers. Born in Virginia in 1888, Byrd built a remarkable naval career during an era when aviation itself was still in its infancy. While many officers remained cautious about flying, Byrd believed aircraft would completely transform exploration. He wasn't interested in following maps created by others. He wanted to create entirely new ones. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Byrd became internationally famous for organizing daring polar expeditions that pushed technology and human endurance to their limits. Newspapers celebrated him as a national hero. His expeditions gathered valuable scientific information about weather patterns, geography, and the massive frozen wilderness surrounding Earth's southernmost continent. His achievements earned medals, awards, and worldwide recognition. To millions of Americans, he represented courage, determination, and the relentless desire to explore places no one had fully understood. Yet Antarctica itself remained one of the least explored regions on Earth. Even today, it is larger than Europe, covered by ice several kilometers thick in many places. Beneath that frozen surface lies an ancient continent hiding mountains, valleys, lakes, and geological formations that remained unknown for centuries. During Byrd's era, enormous portions of Antarctica had never been seen by human eyes. For explorers, Antarctica represented the final frontier. For scientists, it was a natural laboratory unlike any other. But for military planners during the years surrounding the Second World War, Antarctica also held strategic importance. Advances in aviation meant aircraft could someday fly across the polar regions far more efficiently than around the globe. Understanding polar weather, navigation, and survival in extreme conditions suddenly became matters of national security rather than simple scientific curiosity. When World War II ended in 1945, the world entered a new period of uncertainty. Nations that had fought together now viewed each other with growing suspicion. Military technology advanced rapidly. Governments invested heavily in research, mapping, logistics, and strategic planning. Remote regions once considered useless suddenly attracted attention because no one knew what future conflicts might require. It was during this atmosphere that the United States organized one of the largest Antarctic expeditions ever attempted. Officially, the mission was called Operation Highjump. Announced as a large-scale naval exercise beginning in late 1946, its stated goals were straightforward. The expedition would test ships, aircraft, equipment, and personnel under extreme polar conditions. Scientists would continue mapping unexplored coastline while engineers evaluated how military hardware performed in severe cold. Lessons learned could prove invaluable if American forces ever needed to operate in Arctic environments. On paper, these objectives made perfect sense. After fighting across deserts, jungles, mountains, and oceans during World War II, preparing for operations in polar climates seemed entirely reasonable. Still, the sheer size of the expedition surprised many observers. Operation Highjump included thousands of personnel, numerous ships, aircraft, helicopters, bulldozers, specialized vehicles, and extensive logistical support. It became the largest American expedition ever sent to Antarctica. Such an enormous undertaking naturally attracted public interest, newspaper coverage, and later, endless speculation. Most participants believed they were serving on an ambitious, but ordinary military exercise combined with scientific exploration. They trained, packed supplies, maintained equipment, and followed orders exactly as sailors always had. Few imagined their mission would eventually become one of history's greatest conspiracy legends. As the fleet sailed south toward Antarctica, excitement mixed with uncertainty. Conditions in the Southern Ocean were among the harshest anywhere on Earth. Massive waves, freezing temperatures, floating icebergs, and violent storms constantly threatened even experienced crews. Every landing required careful planning because one mistake could trap equipment beneath shifting ice or destroy valuable aircraft. Life on the continent itself proved equally unforgiving. The cold penetrated every layer of clothing. Machinery frequently
malfunctioned. Snowstorms appeared without warning, reducing visibility almost instantly. Navigation remained difficult despite modern instruments because magnetic conditions near the poles often interfered with compasses. Pilots relied on multiple methods to determine their position, constantly checking calculations to avoid becoming hopelessly lost above an endless landscape that looked nearly identical in every direction. Despite these obstacles, Operation Highjump achieved numerous documented successes. Crews photographed vast stretches of previously unmapped coastline. Scientists collected valuable geological and meteorological data. Pilots demonstrated new techniques for operating aircraft in polar conditions. Engineers learned important lessons about maintaining heavy equipment under extreme environmental stress. Everything recorded in official reports reflected an ambitious expedition, facing predictable challenges in one of Earth's most hostile environments. Yet history often becomes more complicated when official records leave unanswered questions. One fact repeatedly discussed by historians is that Operation Highjump ended earlier than originally anticipated. Various logistical difficulties, worsening ice conditions, damaged equipment accidents, and the demanding Antarctic environment influenced operational decisions. Expeditions of this scale regularly adjusted schedules based on circumstances encountered in the field. However, decades later, some writers interpreted the shortened timeline differently. They began asking dramatic questions. Had the expedition discovered something unexpected? Was information intentionally withheld? Were classified military objectives mixed with publicly announced scientific goals? These questions eventually evolved into extraordinary theories that spread far beyond available historical evidence. One persistent rumor claimed Byrd encountered unknown technology beneath Antarctica's ice. Another alleged hidden underground civilizations. Others insisted secret wartime bases existed deep within remote mountain ranges. As each decade passed, these stories grew increasingly elaborate. Books, radio programs, documentaries, websites, and online videos repeated the claims until many people could no longer distinguish documented history from imaginative speculation. Adding fuel to these mysteries was Byrd himself. Unlike many explorers who eagerly described every adventure, Byrd remained relatively disciplined in public interviews. Military officers often avoided discussing classified operational details, especially during the tense years following World War II. This ordinary professional discretion later became interpreted by conspiracy theorists as evidence that he was hiding astonishing discoveries. Another frequently discussed topic involved an alleged personal diary attributed to Byrd. According to stories circulating for decades, the diary described impossible landscapes hidden within Antarctica. Lush valleys, unusual flying machines, mysterious civilizations, and warnings delivered by unknown beings. The problem is that historians have never authenticated the sensational diary as a genuine document written by Byrd himself. No verified archival evidence confirms extraordinary claims contained in versions circulating online. Most researchers conclude the famous secret diary appeared many years after Byrd's expeditions and lacks reliable historical provenance. But for believers, uncertainty became proof rather than doubt. If records were incomplete, they assumed information had been removed. If documents remained classified for ordinary military reasons, they assumed governments were hiding astonishing secrets. If witnesses remembered events differently decades later, every inconsistency became another piece of a growing puzzle. This combination of genuine historical mystery and imaginative storytelling transformed Operation Highjump into one of modern history's most enduring legends. Then came another twist. Years after the expedition ended, Stories began circulating about an elderly veteran who allegedly claimed he had served alongside Admiral Byrd and remained silent for decades. According to various versions of the tale, he finally decided that before his death, he needed to reveal everything he believed had happened in Antarctica. His alleged testimony would ignite fresh debate around one haunting question. Did he possess forgotten memories from one of history's greatest expeditions? Or had decades of rumors gradually reshaped those memories into something entirely different? The story of the so-called last survivor spread rapidly across the internet because it contained everything people love about unsolved mysteries. There was an aging witness, a lifetime of silence, secret military orders, missing records, and Antarctica itself, a place so remote that almost anything seems possible. But when historians began investigating these claims, they found something surprising. While Admiral Byrd's expeditions are thoroughly documented, there is no verified historical evidence confirming that a surviving crew member made a deathbed confession revealing hidden civilizations or impossible discoveries beneath the Antarctic ice. That doesn't mean everyone who served on those expeditions remembered them the same way. Military operations often leave participants with different perspectives. Sailors, pilots, mechanics, radio operators, and scientists each witnessed only a small portion of the overall mission. A mechanic working on aircraft might never know what a reconnaissance pilot observed. Likewise, a communications officer might hear fragmented conversations without understanding their full context. Years later, memories naturally become mixed with assumptions, rumors, and stories shared among veterans. This is exactly how legends often begin. Imagine spending months in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Every day presents new dangers. Thick fog suddenly hides mountains. Compasses become unreliable. Radio communication fades in and out. Strange optical illusions appear across endless fields of snow and ice. Under those conditions, unusual experiences are almost guaranteed. Most have perfectly natural explanations, but not all of them feel ordinary in the moment. Antarctica is famous for producing visual phenomena that can confuse even experienced explorers. Layers of cold and warm air bend light in unusual ways, creating mirages that make distant mountains appear suspended in the sky. Ice crystals reflect sunlight into brilliant halos. Vast white landscapes eliminate familiar points of reference, making distance almost impossible to judge accurately. A ridge that appears only a few hundred meters away may actually be several kilometers distant. For explorers unfamiliar with these conditions, the continent itself can seem almost supernatural. Then there are the sounds. Modern Antarctic researchers have described hearing deep booming noises caused by shifting glaciers, cracking sea ice, and enormous pressure building beneath frozen surfaces. Some compare the sounds to distant thunder. Others describe them as low mechanical humming. Without understanding the science behind these natural events, early explorers could easily interpret them as something far more mysterious. Even navigation added to the confusion. Near the South Pole, magnetic compasses become increasingly unreliable because magnetic north lies thousands of kilometers away. During Byrd's era, navigation required constant calculations using multiple instruments, celestial observations, and dead reckoning. A temporary equipment malfunction could easily convince inexperienced crew members that something extraordinary had occurred. Despite these perfectly reasonable explanations, stories continued growing. One of the most famous legends claims that Byrd discovered an entrance leading beneath Antarctica into a hidden world. Variations of this story describe enormous caverns, underground rivers, advanced civilizations, or even prehistoric animals surviving in secret ecosystems. These tales became popular because Antarctica still contains many genuine mysteries. Scientists have discovered hundreds of subglacial lakes trapped beneath kilometers of ice. Some remain isolated from the outside world for millions of years. Entire mountain ranges exist beneath the ice sheet, unknown until radar technology revealed them. Vast canyons larger than the Grand Canyon lie hidden below the frozen surface. These discoveries demonstrate something remarkable. Reality is already extraordinary. There is no need to invent impossible civilizations to appreciate how little humanity truly understands about Antarctica. Perhaps the most misunderstood element of Byrd's legacy involves comments he made after Operation Highjump concluded. During interviews conducted in South America, Byrd discussed the growing importance of polar aviation. He warned that future conflicts might involve aircraft capable of traveling across polar regions far more efficiently than traditional routes. Over time, conspiracy theorists isolated portions of these remarks and presented them without context. His practical military observations gradually transformed into alleged warnings about unknown flying machines or hidden enemies operating from Antarctica. The original meaning became overshadowed by sensational reinterpretations repeated across countless books and videos. This pattern appears throughout history. A small factual statement becomes exaggerated. The exaggerated version inspires new speculation. Speculation is repeated often enough that many people eventually mistake it for established history. Meanwhile, the original evidence quietly fades into the background. As researchers continued examining Operation Highjump decades later, they found extensive documentation describing weather observations, aircraft operations, mapping projects, equipment testing, and logistical challenges. Like any large military expedition, some records remain classified for years before eventually becoming available through archives. None of the verified documents revealed evidence of secret civilizations or impossible technology. Still, unanswered questions remain. Not because history has been hidden, but because Antarctica itself continues guarding many of its natural secrets. Nearly 98% of the continent remains buried beneath ice. Scientists regularly discover new geological formations using satellite imagery, radar mapping, and seismic surveys. Hidden lakes, ancient river systems, volcanic activity beneath the ice, and previously unknown mountain ranges remind us that exploration is far from complete. In many ways, Antarctica remains as mysterious today as it appeared during Byrd's lifetime. Modern technology has improved our understanding dramatically, yet enormous areas remain inaccessible. Drilling through kilometers of ice requires years of planning. Harsh weather still delays research missions. Winter darkness lasts for months. Temperatures routinely fall below minus 60 degrees Celsius. These conditions naturally inspire imagination. Whenever humanity encounters places that remain largely unexplored, myths inevitably follow. The deep ocean has its legends. The Amazon rainforest has its mysteries. Space inspires endless speculation. Antarctica is no different. Perhaps that explains why stories connected to Admiral Byrd continue attracting millions of readers and viewers. They combine genuine exploration with unanswered questions, real history with human imagination. Every generation revisits the same mystery, hoping new evidence might finally emerge. But perhaps the greatest lesson is not whether hidden civilizations exist beneath Antarctica. Instead, it is recognizing the importance of separating documented history from fascinating speculation. Richard E. Byrd accomplished enough during his lifetime without fictional additions. He helped pioneer polar aviation, expanded scientific knowledge, inspired generations of explorers, and demonstrated extraordinary courage under some of Earth's harshest conditions. Those achievements alone secured his place in history. As a mysterious last survivor who supposedly broke decades of silence, no authenticated historical record confirms the dramatic confessions commonly repeated online. The story survives because it captures our imagination, not because historians have verified its claims. And maybe that is why Antarctica continues fascinating the world. It reminds us that mystery still exists. Not every unanswered question requires a supernatural explanation. Sometimes the greatest mystery is simply how much remains undiscovered. Beneath Antarctica's endless ice lie ancient landscapes, hidden mountains, buried lakes, and geological wonders that scientists are only beginning to understand. Those real discoveries are astonishing enough to challenge everything humanity once believed about the frozen continent. Perhaps future expeditions will uncover evidence that rewrites parts of Antarctic history. Perhaps they will reveal entirely new chapters in Earth's geological story. Or perhaps they will simply remind us that exploration is never truly finished. Until then, the legend of Admiral Byrd will continue standing at the crossroads of fact and folklore, a place where authentic history ends, imagination begins, and every generation must decide for itself where the line between the two truly lies.